Well, the world has sure gone nutty, buddy, even downright cruddy, buddy. Wish I missed the past, buddy, but there's still Buddycast. No, don't be nutty, go meet everybody here on Buddycast.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and host of Buddycast, Nick Sorensen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of everybody's favorite show, Buddycast. I'm your host, Nick Sorensen. Joining me today is a very, very special buddy. I've met him when he came to Erie, Pennsylvania. He had me laughing so hard, I just knew I had to get him on the show, and I'm glad I did. I'm here with my buddy, Rondell. How you doing, Rondell?
I'm good, and you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you again for stopping on the show and being a buddy here on Buddycast.
You're more than welcome. You told me you had your theme song was going to be something I hadn't heard, and I had heard it before, so I thought maybe you had gotten a new theme song.
Nope, same theme song that everybody loves.
Very cool.
Don't change the formula when it's working, you know?
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. So, Rondell, you're an actor, you're a comedian. Take us down this road. How did this all become possible?
Wow, it's a long road. I did something that you normally could not do today. This was I went for an extra semester at college. I went to Marquette University in Milwaukee, and I was in the elevator with another classmate one evening, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing after graduation?" This is like January, and he said he's going to go to NYU drama school, and I go, I always thought about going into acting. He said, "You should consider it." And I go, "I really don't know much about it." And he said, "Upstairs, I got a bunch of brochures from different schools." And he goes, "Come and get them." So I grabbed a bunch. I go back down to my room, and there was a brochure from LAMDA, which is the London Academy of Dramatic Arts, RADA, which is the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, which was NYU. There was Yale Rep, and then there was one other school and a school called Circle in the Square. And I had no money coming out of college, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to go to London for that. I knew I wasn't a good enough student to go to Yale. And also, all of the schools had you could go there and audition, or you could have a regional audition. And normally the regional auditions were in Los Angeles, Chicago, Boston, Miami, Texas, somewhere where if you were close enough, you could go. I had missed all of those. And the only one was this school called Circle in the Square, which was in New York. And they had auditions coming up in a couple of weeks. So with that in mind, I go the next morning, wake up, and I call them. And I had a conversation that you could not have today. I picked up the phone and I called them, and they said, "Hello, Circle in the Square." And I said, "Hi, my name is Rondell Sheridan. I sent in my application a couple of months ago, and I haven't heard anything back from you guys. Keep in mind, I just heard of this school the night before this phone call." And I said, "I haven't heard any back from you guys." She goes, "Oh, okay, no worries. Let me put you on hold." And she comes back and she goes, "What's the last name?" I go, "It's Sheridan, Sheridan." And she goes, "Great." She puts me on hold, comes back a couple of minutes later, goes, "Miss Sheridan, we're having a problem finding your application." I said, "You know what? Sometimes people think Rondell is my last name. So check Rondell." She goes, "Oh, okay, great." Puts me on hold. Comes back, he goes, "Yeah, we can't find your application." She said, "I'll have you talk to the dean." And I go, No. She goes, "No, it's okay. You can talk to the dean." So the dean comes on and goes, "Mr. Sheridan, I'm really sorry, but we can't find your application." If there was an Academy Award for the best phone performance, I would have surely at least been nominated, because I go on and say, no. I knew I should have called you weeks before. It's too late now for me to start all over again. And he's trying to interrupt me. And I'm not giving him a chance at all. I'm just laying it on. No, what am I going to do? And he goes, Mr. Sheridan, are you available in 2 weeks? And I go, what's 2 weeks? And I have the brochure in front of me. I'm looking at what he's looking at. He goes, well, in 2 weeks, we're going to have auditions here in New York City. Can you make that? And I go, well, I don't know. I just, I go, what about my letters and recommendations? He goes, I'm sure you can go to your teachers and get a letter of recommendation and all that. And I go, okay. So we hang up the phone. And luckily, it was my spring break where I knew I was able to go. And I went to the dean of my acting school, and I'd only auditioned for one play. And I went in and I said, hey, I don't know if you ever heard of this school or not, Circle in the Square, but I have an audition for them and I need some help. And he's looking at me like I'm crazy. He's looking at me like, hey, have you ever, he's looking at me like I went into the physics department and said, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Albert Einstein, but I have this paper that I wrote that they want to see. So he goes, Circle in the Square. And I go, yeah, it's a school. And he goes, I know Circle in the Square. He goes, I've only seen you once here. I go, audition for a thing. He goes, I remember. And I said, I didn't get a part, so I left. And he goes, the reason you didn't get the part was you weren't right for it. You're playing a Mexican old man. And I went, oh, okay. I was like, I didn't know. So he helped me with 2 monologues, and my aunt loaned me $100 so I could take the train from Milwaukee to New York and back. And I worked on the monologue, and then my train was a couple hours late, got delayed. And so it was no big deal because I was just on the train working my monologue. I got off at Union Station, and I walked from there to Circle in the Square, which was on 50th and Broadway. And I walked in, and I had never auditioned for like a real thing before. And so I walk in with my bags, and they go, do you need some time? And I go, no, I'm ready. I'm good. And I do my 2 monologues. And at the end, I thought that, we'd go out to the bar, have some drinks, socialize, talk about New York City. I got the thank you very much. And that was it. And I was like, oh, okay. And I grabbed my bags and I walked, and I stayed at some friends that lived in New Jersey for the weekend because it was on a Friday. And so that Sunday, I get back on a train, go to Milwaukee, and I get back to my apartment that I was staying at, and my roommates had left my mail on the bed. And on the bed was a letter from Circle in the Square. And this is back in the day when you could mail something. They mailed it, obviously, Friday, got there on Monday, it's laying on my bed, and it was a thin letter. And I'm sure you know the thick letter you get in, thin letter you're not in. And so I opened the letter, and it said, Dear Mr. Sheridan, every year we get hundreds of applications to Circle in the Square Professional Theater School. Unfortunately, we cannot accept all of them. That's as far as I got. I folded the letter up, put it on the side, and went and made myself lunch. Had some lunch, came back to the living room. I looked at the letter, and I go, well, let me just read this whole thing. And it said, Dear Mr. Sheridan, every year at Circle and Square Theater School, we get hundreds of applications. Unfortunately, we cannot accept all of them. New paragraph. However, we'd like to offer you a spot at our school. And that was how it started. So I went to New York, met a ton of people. And while I was there, one of my classmates' sister was a stand-up comic. And I had a huge crush on her and would follow her from club to club to club. And one day she said, you know what, you're funny. You should think about doing stand-up. And I was like, well, my album collection back then, when you had an album collection, a quarter of my album collection was comedy. I loved watching comics on Tonight Show, on the Merv Griffin show, any show that had comedians. I love comedians. And so I took the challenge, and one night I went up. And the good thing about it was that group of people hadn't been doing stand-up longer than 2 years. If they had been professionals, this club that I went to, I would have probably never been a stand-up. because I watched them on stage and I said, I'm as funny as you guys. I'm not as funny as somebody who's been doing it 10 years. But for you guys, I'm as funny as you guys are. And so that started it, between going to school during the day and hanging out. It was the Improv eventually where I got passed to be a regular at. And it was, when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, you'd go on at 2:00 in the morning and you were happy for 4 drunk people that stuck around for 2:00 in the morning. And that's how it started.
Wonderful. You mentioned you had an album collection. Who were some of your idols growing up? Who were some of your comedy idols growing up?
Well, it's funny. My first album was the Smothers Brothers. I bought, doesn't exist anymore. You might have heard of it. So they had the Columbia Record Club. And for one penny, you got 7 albums. And so I'm seeing this in the newspaper. I don't know how old I was, 10, 12 years old. And I go, 12 albums for a penny? I got a penny. So that's when you tape a penny to the thing, send it in. And I got all these albums. And the one of the ones I picked was the Smothers Brothers. And I remember my mom, she came home and she goes, where'd all these come from? I go, I signed up for the thing. It was a penny. And she got on the phone. And whenever my mom's so angry, she goes, I don't care how much it costs. You sold it to a kid. He's 10. He's 10 years old. He's 10. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's 10. So they go. So she hangs up the phone. And I go, do I have to give them back? She goes, no. They said you could keep them. And so that was it. But back then it was Cosby. I probably had 3 or 4 Cosby albums. But Pryor, I had to go to a friend's house to hear Richard Pryor. And Rudy Ray Moore, Moms Mabley, all those guys in the beginning were the foundation for it. And they were all storytellers, which is what I wound up being. But a really interesting story that to this day I still talk about. Probably late 90s. I'm working at Bally's in Vegas, and they have a comedy club there. I think it was Catch Rising Star Comedy Club. And George Carlin is playing in the big room. And for some reason, one day I'm in my room and I get up and look through the peephole, not because there's any noise. I must have been bored that afternoon. I look through the peephole, and through the peephole, I see a security guard walk by. And then I see George Carlin walk by with a little dog in his hand and his arm, and then another security guard walk by. And they go to the room right across from my room. And I go, oh, wow, George is standing right across. So I go, okay. So I call down to the front desk and I go, hey, I'd like to leave a message for George Carlin. I said, I'm Rondell Sheridan. I'm the comedian headlining at the club below. I'm at the comedy club there. And I was wondering if I get a ticket to come see his show, because we were both doing 2 shows a night. But my show, I lost the command of English language, overlapped his show. So I could see the second half of his show. And I go, could you relay the message? And they left a message back, said, George left you 2 tickets. And he says, if you have time, why don't you come by backstage in between shows? And I go, great. So I go and watch the second half of the show. I wish I could remember any of the material. I don't remember any of it. I just remember wow. There's Carlin at his, like I said, it was 90s. So he was killing it. And when it was over, I went backstage and we did a little talk. And then he goes, so where are you from? And I said, I'm from South Side of Chicago. And he goes, no, he goes, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Chicago. And he goes, where in Chicago? And I go, South Side. And he goes, where on the South Side? Now, at this point, I'm like, look, white man, I live on the South Side of Chicago. You do not know anything about the South Side of Chicago. You might know Leroy Brown, who's the baddest man in the whole damn town, but that's all you know. So he goes, where on the South Side of Chicago? And I go 76 and King Drive. And he says, I don't know where 76 and King Drive is, but I do know where 76 and South Park is. And my jaw dropped. Because when Martin Luther King died, they renamed South Park to Martin Luther King Drive. And I then have to ask George Carlin, how do you know a street corner that is a block from my house? And he said he used to work the Playboy Club, and there used to be a little jazz bar, and I finished the sentence on the corner. And I said, George, my mom would send me there right around the Columbia record phase on Saturdays to go get her a pack of Sheridan 100s, because in the vestibule of the club, they had one of these old-fashioned cigarette machines that you had to pull a slot, for the cigarettes to fall down. So sometimes I would go in my pajamas, because it'd be Chicago, I'm a 10-year-old kid. I walked out in my pajamas, opened the door, people were looking at me like, what you looking at? I'm getting cigarettes from my mama, okay? And I go, and that was a jazz club. It was smoking, it was just adult people, and the playing the music. And I go, George, how did you find out about the club? And he goes, the jazz guys from the Playboy Club in Chicago. And I remember watching, I don't know if you ever saw clips of the Playboy After Dark. It was a TV show that came on, and Hugh Hefner would host it, and it was always stars. It just made it seem like it's eventually what the Playboy Mansion turned out to be, but there were just always stars, and the camera would pan, and there'd be a comedian telling jokes, and then the camera would pan again, and then a singer would take stage, and she would start singing, and there'd be famous people sitting at the couch, and they were interviewing, and it was a wild show. It was incredible. So the moment he said Playboy Club, I go, oh, that made sense. And then I go, George, did anybody, I go, you realize you were the only white guy within 30-mile radius of that club? And he goes, oh, yeah. And I go, did anybody ever mess with you? And he goes, a couple times. He said, but all the jazz musicians would say, hey, leave him alone. And I go, but George, this is like 68, right? 67. And he goes, yeah. And I go, you were George Carlin back then. You were a huge star. I don't care what color you were a huge star. And so that just blew me away. That a block from my house. If I had known, I would have walked there myself and got his autograph. I would just, my mother would say, where were you going? I'm getting you some Sheridan 100s, and I'm getting George Carlin's autograph. That's where I'm going.
Love it. Love it. I have a funny George Carlin story myself. When you come to Erie, which we're going to talk about next, when you come to Erie, you have to go right next door to the National Comedy Center if you've ever been there.
I have not.
And you got to go there. It's fantastic. It's like the Comedy Hall of Fame. That's the best way I can put it. But his daughter Kelly was there one time, and I got to hear her speak. I don't remember much of the story, but what I do remember is that he was doing a festival or a show somewhere, and they thought they were hiring someone for like family entertainment. Carlin. Exactly. Carlin.
Well, if this had been 68, 67, then yes. But by the time the 70s came, his act has changed big time.
So they're expecting this clean community. Carlin goes on stage. He's doing all this. The one manager comes up to Carlin's wife and goes, just to let you know, we're going to cut the show early. The police are waiting to arrest your husband on stage right. So she goes up to the stage, and Carlin's like, what are you doing? She hands him some water, gives him a hug, and says, the police are waiting for you on stage right. Exit stage left. So the daughter goes, does my dad cut it there? No. My dad has to do the 7 words. My dad has to go out with a bang and do the 7 words, So he's doing that. Someone's turning down his mic slowly, everything like that. They get off stage, like it was just
the last one. He doesn't get to CS. The last one.
Yep, exactly.
Oh no, actually, exactly. The M is the last one. Yes.
Yep, exactly. So She's just like, it couldn't anyone have my father, but it had to be my father out of all of them. You know, he doesn't just run off stage and be like, see you later. Nope, he ends with the Devon.
No,
He has to go out the bang and go out the 7 words. So, but hey, speaking of comedy, you're going to be in my neck of the woods pretty soon here at Keller's Magic and Comedy Club.
I am.
Mm-hmm. You and I have met there before. What's your experience like at Keller's?
I love it. I mean, the 2 times I was on before, there was a magician, there was a mentalist, and so I love, you know, people say they love comedy. I go, you love a certain kind of comedy. You love the comedy you like, but everybody loves magic. It's not like somebody says, oh, I only like sleight of hand or this. It's just like magic you love. And I always tell magicians when I meet them, I go, don't tell me how you do the trick. But if I can figure out how you do the trick, tell me I'm right. But I don't want you to, you know, if we hang out for the week, you know, go, okay, I'll tell you. I go, no, don't tell me how to do the trick. Let me try to figure out how the trick is done. So I love magic. It's incredible. And the history, there's so much history, Houdini history there. So that's what's really great.
Mm-hmm. If you ever if you go down like just a block from the club and you go down towards the train station, there's a sign actually that says who Harry Keller was.
Oh,
right down by the
wow.
train station. It's right in that square there. It says the connection that he has with our hometown. So that's how we got the name Kellers. But speaking of that, you know, Bobby Portia, wonderful guy. I know you guys have some history. Explain how you met Bobby, because
I met Bobby. We were working Carnival Cruise Line. Bobby was doing his shows there, and one day I thought about this. I can't remember who the other 2 comics were hanging out with, but there were 4 of us. We got off a ship somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and we had to go through customs at the airport, and then we had like a 3-hour hang at the airport. And so, you know, you collect everybody's number, hey, blah, blah, blah. And Bobby had said then, hey, man, I'll be in touch. I have some projects that I'm working on. And you hear this all the time. You hear people, hey, I'm working on something. And then like 2-3 years later, I get an email. And I'm like, wait, is this the guy, Bobby? And I go, yeah. He goes, I got a club. I want you to come. I'm like, wait, you have a club? You have a club? He goes, yeah. And so it's been great. I had a great time. I missed it 1 year because of COVID, but I think this is my 3rd time coming back. I always have fun.
So you like coming to Erie?
Well, that and the Buffalo Wings. I wish I could remember the name of the place that Bobby takes me, but we get off the plane and immediately go get Buffalo Wings. Yeah. I think it's in my contract that I have to be taken to get Buffalo Wings.
Hey, hold him to it. Hold him to it. So just to let our viewers know, if you're in the Erie area, Rondell's going to be at Keller's on March 22nd and 23rd. So, but Rondell, when you're not acting, when you're not doing comedy, what are some of your favorite hobbies?
Well, for a long time, I've been doing axe murdering, and I have a whole axe collection in the basement that I keep them sharp, which is very important if you're going to be an axe murderer, because having a dull axe, it's just people are yelling, what are you doing? You hit me, that hurt, you know, so no, I'm kidding. A lot of video productions now because of Instagram, doing a lot of clips, so I'm doing a lot of editing and interior design. I started with a project where I remodeled my home to the studs. And we had a full gut remodel. And so I've been really getting into that. That's almost kind of my passion that I've said this several times, that I probably would have whispered in my ear when I went to New York for acting school, that would have said, hey, you might think about something you don't realize that you like, which is interior design. So that's it. That's yeah.
Nice. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit here. One question I wanted to ask you, you're also an actor. How did you find the roles like with Cousin Skeeter, That's So Raven? How did those come into play?
Well, I was in New York for 10 years. And, you know, it was one of those situations where you're a big fish in a little pond. And that little pond was New York City. And it was time to go. A comedian friend of mine had given me some advice. He goes, don't go to LA until somebody pays your plane ticket. which basically meant don't go to LA unless you have a job. And so I've been to LA twice. And so in 1990, I went out for a look-see, which was just to check out the clubs, see if it was a place where I felt like I wanted to work. And I was there for a week, and I got the Tonight Show. And so I packed up everything in New York and moved out to LA. And, it just, the good thing was I went to acting school. So there was some techniques, some things that I learned and knew. But I got lucky. I had an audition for a TV show in like 94, 90, I think it was 95, with Whit Thomas. And Whit Thomas did Blossom, Golden Girls, Soap. And I got my first show, which was Minor Adjustments. And then that ran a year on NBC. And then I was looking for a job. And then my manager called me and said, hey, they want to meet you over at Nickelodeon. And so that was really it. It was because I had the show on NBC, and Nickelodeon called and offered me a job there for Cousin Skeeter, which was 3 years, which was fantastic. I enjoyed doing that show. Drew and the whole gang, but Drew was the puppeteer, and Drew made it really fun. And we just had a really great cast. And it was great.
Awesome. That was going to be my next question. What was it like working with the puppet?
It was fun. It was just like you're not really working with I mean, you are working with the puppet, but it's Drew who's the main puppeteer. Most people think of Bill Bellamy, who did the voice for Cousin Skeeter. But what was really interesting was I hadn't watched the show, when it first came out, and it was thrown because I hear Bill's voice. We rehearsed to Drew's voice, who was the puppeteer. So, I still watch the show, and it sounds foreign to me, where I would spend an entire week hearing Drew. I'm kind of jealous because Bill has the easiest job. Bill just came in the studio for an hour, dubbed all of the puppets' lines, and then left. And I'm like, I had to work the whole week. Yeah.
Awesome. What about That's So Raven? How'd you get that role?
That's So Raven. I was doing a talk show, Men from Mars, Women from Venus, and my agent had called me and said, "Hey, we got a call from Disney. They'd like for you to come in." And hold on, I'm still here, but my camera has. There we go. My camera has one of those 30-minute windows, so you have to reset it. Anyway, I got a phone call from Disney saying they want you to come in for a show, and I had auditioned for, I forgot the movie. It was an animation movie, and I thought it was calling me back for that. And he goes, "No, it's a TV show." And I go, "Okay." And so that TV show. I came in after work, and I noticed when I walked in, they said, "You don't have to audition, they just want to meet you." And I remember I went in, and tons of comedians were there. And I happened to look at the sign-up sheet, but no one was auditioning for my character. And I go, "Oh, okay, so they were serious about it being a meeting." And I was there for about an hour and a half, and there's only a few people left. And a PA came up to me and said, "Hey, Mr. Sheridan, I'm really sorry, but they want you to audition." And I said, "You didn't say that on the phone. You said you just want to meet." And he said, "Yeah, they really want you to audition." And I go, "I've been here for 90 minutes. You could have given me the script." And I go, "You know what? I'll give it my best shot." And I remember the scene was really complicated for an audition piece of someone just giving it to you, because I was talking to somebody on a speakerphone, I was making a cake, and I'm talking to my daughter. So in your head, auditioning, you have a reference point of, there's a speakerphone that you're talking to. You're making a cake. You got business to do, and you're talking to somebody. So I kind of muddled it through. And when it was done, I called my manager and I told him what happened. And he said, "You didn't audition, did you?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." And he said, "Man," he said, you should have said, 'Hey, I'd love to do this. Can I come back tomorrow? Let me prepare this.'" And he goes, "Well, let me see tomorrow what they said." And they came back and he said, "Well, they thought you were really funny, but they went in a different direction." And I said, "Okay, cool." So about, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months go by. I get another phone call from Disney. And they said, "Hey, we want to see you for this show." And I go, "Okay." And this script was the sides that I got, which was a scene that I had auditioned for, was completely different what I auditioned before. And a lot of people don't know this, but the original That's So Raven, Ray was the sidekick on that show. It was called something psychic. I can't remember what it was called. But she was the sidekick on that show. She wasn't psychic. She wasn't the star. She was the sidekick. But Raven Simone is 1,000-watt light bulb. And if you stand next to her, if you're not at least an 800-watt light bulb, you disappear. So she's a force to be reckoned with. When I met her when she was 14 years old, and she was just a solid professional. Would scare most adults of going, how do you have this much knowledge? How are you this talented at 14 years old? So anyway, so I'm reading the script, and I remember when I went into the audition, I said, I'm a little confused. Am I a chef in this? And they go, yes. And I said, is Raven Simone my daughter? And they said, yes. And I go, okay. But the script was completely different. So I go in and I audition for it. I think it was probably the best audition I've ever had in my life. I knew walking in, I go, I'm either getting this part or they're going to call my agent and go, was he drinking? Because this is completely different of what we wanted. I made a choice and I go, I'm sticking with this. And so it proved to be the right choice. And it was a weird journey because we shot the entire first season before it aired. And Disney was a little afraid of the show because they were going to go into markets that were not Black. They didn't have Black content for Disney Channel. So we went to Asia. There was no Black content. We went to Disney Europe. There was no Black content. So they tested this show everywhere. Plus, we were something that Disney Channel had not done before. We were the first live audience show. We were the first 4-camera show. We were the first show with a Black lead. We were the first show with a Black family. And there was something else, and I can't remember what it was. There were 5 things that we were the first. So they tested that show. And, we started in, I think, August. And the show was supposed to air in September. It got pushed to November. It got pushed to January. It got pushed to February. And finally, I think it debuted in April or May of the following year. But during that time, if you watch, just go to wherever you have access to That's So Raven. Watch the last episode of season 1 and watch the first episode of season 2. A year has passed, and watch the difference in the kids. And when I tell people that, they go, oh my God, they're huge. They have grown, because they're children. They grow like weeds. They have grown exponentially between the 2 seasons. And it was just really wild. Like every now and then I'll watch something from first season, second season, and just go, yep, that's what happened. So it was a great time, great moment. It was odd being a parent on that show because people always ask me my memories about the show. And I go, yeah, my memories have nothing to do with the cast members because they were kids. Friday night we'd go drinking with the crew. There was a bar across the street. None of the kids could go to there. All my memories of them have nothing to do with any of the kids on the show.
That is awesome. So now I got to ask, what were your thoughts on your character, Chef Victor?
It was fun. I had good moments. It was really great in which we'd have guest stars come on our show and they go, man, your set is so nice. It's so much fun. And I didn't understand what they were saying until somebody explained it to me. They said, a lot of TV shows, people don't get along. There's a lot of tension on the show. And this was so much fun. And it goes back to Cousin Skeeter. I've been very lucky from my first show, Minor Adjustments, that the show was fun. We always had a lot of good times. And I have been on shows that were not fun. And you could feel it when you're a guest on the show. You're like, there are 2 people who star on the show who do not like each other. And when that camera's on, there's all smiles. But the moment they go cut, they just go in different things. And it's just, I had a stage manager, Eric Dean Seaton, who said, TV shows go the way of the stars. If the star is really laid back, the show's laid back. If the star is very intense or whatever, the show is going to be that way. So luckily, I work with some good people. The show has always been fun.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear it was just a fun environment. It wasn't that this guy goes this way, you go your way. That's where we're leaving at. You know?
Yeah.
So, what does Chef Victor and what do Andre think of Buddycast?
It seems great. I was trying to find out some more information, but it seems that it's the theme of just having a buddy, and that's the I was telling a friend this summer I went back to Chicago and hung out with the 4 guys that I hung out with when I was growing up, and it's like no time had went by. They're still razzing you for the same stupid crap that you do, and you're razzing them. And it was great. I missed that more than anything else. So having a buddy, I thought their theme song was going to be that My Buddy song. My buddy. I can't sing, but anyway, I thought that was good. That you got your new theme song.
I'll have the guy who wrote this theme song write it up immediately. But you actually touched on our next question, which I absolutely love. I asked this to all my buddies who come on the show. First off, you're not a guest. You're a buddy on Buddycast.
Thank you.
But speaking of buddies, my buddy Jonas Kane from #Positivity wants to know, in your own words, what does it mean to be someone's buddy?
It's the midnight phone call. That's really it. It's the midnight phone call. Regardless if it's something good or something bad. When you have a cell phone, before you had caller ID, when you had caller ID and the phone rang at midnight, you didn't care. But you see that name, you see that person, no matter what. If they're calling, it doesn't matter why they're calling. It's pick up the phone. And I think that's it.
Awesome. The final question I have for you tonight is what we call the ultimate Buddycast buddy question. You ready for it? I'm going to put this into 2 words, but I think you could probably answer in one, probably. For anyone out there who wants to be a comedian and an actor, what is your advice to them?
What's the theme for Nike? Just do it. Just do it. Granted, some acting, you might need to take some classes to figure out some stuff. You could do that. But stand-up comedy, when comedy is done really well, it looks like it's just a guy talking, because you don't see, unless you go to clubs where comics are working on material. That's the thing that I love about stand-up comedy. When I lived in New York, you could go to clubs and see comics working on that makes Netflix, HBO special. You don't see that in any other profession. You never been to a concert where the star goes, "Hey, I'm working on this new song. I just have the chord right now," and they play a little bit. What do you think? But comedy's the only thing, the only arts that you can walk in and you can go, "Yeah, let me do that. Oh, yeah, that's new. I'm working on this bit from there," and you can see how it's all put together. That's what I like about it. So do it.
Awesome.
Whatever you're trying to do. Yeah, it's scary. It's when it doesn't work, it is not fun at all. But you'll get through it. It won't kill you.
What about comedians out there who are kind of like in that slump? Like kind of like hit that like period of like, hey, I'm doing my best, but I'm kind of just like, being tough on myself or something like that. What would you advise them?
Well, I mean, they know that hopefully they know that they're in a rut, that they're not happy where they are. I mean, sometimes you could be in a rut and just still happy where you are. But if you're trying to get to the next level, you know it. And, just do it. Just find a place. Every comic needs a safe place to work where you can just work on stuff and be creative however you are creative. And then also, you should have a gaggle of friends where you can go, "Hey, I'm working on this idea. I'm working on this thing." Because I got about 3 or 4 buddies that I go, "Hey, I'm working on this. I need another hook. I need another." We just sit down and we hash it out. We work on it. And I always find that exciting, especially when you get to do it for somebody else. And there's one little nugget that works for them. They go, "Oh, I love that little thing." And then you get to see it on Netflix. You're like, hey, those 4 words were my 4 words. And those 4 words work perfectly.
Awesome. Well, Rondell, thank you for being a buddy on Buddycast. It was a true pleasure, true honor. Can't wait to see you come back to Erie. Thank you for being a buddy.
You're more than welcome, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Hey, before we go, I have 2 favors. Number 1, stick around for a minute. We'll chat afterwards.
Okay.
But number 2, I asked this to all my buddies that come on the show. Whatever you do today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, promise me you're going to go out and you're going to go be someone's buddy.
I give you that promise. Yes.
Solid. For all my buddies out there, this is my buddy, Rondell Sheridan. Please check him out. Check him out in Erie. If you're in Erie, he's coming to Keller's. I'm your host, Nick Sorensen. Thank you for joining us on everybody's favorite show.
Well, the days are going fast, buddy, we've got to make them last, buddy, before they've all gone past, buddy, tune in to Buddycast. But don't be nutty, go make it, buddy, here on Buddycast.